Hey y'all, I'm Elisa, the Scrappy Wife behind ScrappyWife.com, and today I have a Bible journal process video for you. I am jumping into the devotional Our First Love from By the Will for God, and today I will be journaling for day 1, and I'm going to be focusing on the verses in Mark 4:18 through 19. I am super excited to try something that I haven't done before, and that is a little bit of stamp surgery. So I'll be trying to divide up this rainbow stamp. We'll see how it goes. Wish me luck. I will make sure to link everything down below. Heads up, those are affiliate links. They don't cost you anymore, but they do go a long way to supporting this channel. Otherwise, I'll put you on fast forward. Let's go. Okay, this might sound silly because you might have watched a bunch of videos of me working in my Bible journal, but I actually haven't been in my actual Bible in a little while. I've been working in a lot of traveler's notebooks and mini albums, and it feels so good to be back on the pages of my journaling Bible. And I think for me, that's one of the fun things about actually changing it up each month on how I'm working through different devotional kits is that it makes me excited again to try new things. It kind of reinvigorates the creative side of me. So it's fun to be back in my illustrating Bible this month. I started out using the heart stencil that you got if you were one of the first 200 orders from By the Well for God. And then I used some Tattered Rose Distress Oxide to just blend it on the page. I was trying to make a sweeping motion. So you can see it starts small at the top and kind of sweeps to the left and then down to the bottom, getting larger. And now I'm cutting apart my stamp. And this is not something that I do very often, but as soon as I saw the stamp set, I kind of knew that I wanted to cut this one apart. So what I'm doing, these are pretty sharp scissors. These are my Tim Holtz scissors. And I'm just being really careful to make sure now this is sped up a good amount. I'm making sure that I'm staying right in between the two arches of the rainbow as I'm cutting. And I end up with 3 separate little rainbow arches. And I'm so pleased and excited that I cut this. And I can't wait to try it in some multiple ways. I'm doing it in this time because I'm wanting to stamp some different colors. And I feel like it was going to be easier if I just separated the different arches. So you saw me rub it on my arm. I always do that with brand new stamp sets. It kind of takes off some of the oil that is on it just from manufacturing. And now I'm using Distress Oxide. This is the Worn Lipstick, I think. Yeah, Worn Lipstick. Putting that down, I wanted it at a slight angle so it fit in and didn't cover up any of the text right there. I'll clean that off and then I'll come back with my next layer. My next layer is going to be Victorian Velvet, which is another color that goes really nicely with this kit. Again, rubbing it on my arm just because this is the first time. You also see that I bring in some scrap paper to the side. It's always a good idea to do that anytime you stamp, especially when you're using a stamp for the first time, just to make sure that it works how you think it is. You've inked up the parts you thought you wanted to ink up. So I always have a scrap piece of paper just hanging around, especially when I'm stamping, because I'm not an expert stamper. I'm getting so much better than I was for sure, but definitely not an expert. All right, cleaning up the second arch, and now I will move on to the third. For the third arch, I'm going to use iced spruce, same technique, rubbing it off on my arm. Now this time, see, I should have listened to my own advice. I stamp it off. Well, it turns out my iced spruce Distress Oxide is super juicy, and so it kind of smeared a little bit. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a great stamp, but that's okay. Now I have the papers. These are the 6x8 papers that coordinate with this particular kit that you can pick up from By the Well for God. I have been just using up the papers like a champ recently. I have been all about the papers, and especially these that you can just fussy cut out. Look at all of the sweet letters that you could fussy cut out. You get 3 of these papers in the pack, so you don't have to worry about, using up a paper. You're going to have several opportunities to use it. So I'm cutting up these letters, and I'm using them kind of like the clouds that would be at the bottom of a rainbow. And for this particular entry, the letters are representing God's Word or the Bible. And of course, a lot of the Bible, especially the New Testament, is written as letters or are the collection of letters from the different disciples and apostles. And I just want to kind of represent how God's Word really feeds my faith. And that's going to end up being the title of my page. I've actually pulled out an additional stamp set. This one is called Love Letters. I am loving these hearts that are kind of that line art where everything is connected. And I'm going on, like I have those 3 envelopes that are kind of floating up to the top or rising, and I wanted to stamp a heart behind them just to kind of highlight them a little bit. So I'm going to do it in the 3 separate colors. I will do the tattered rose first. It's hard to see on screen, but it's there. And then I'll come in with the ice spruce and end with the Victorian velvet. And I'm using 3 different hearts. I think these are just so gorgeous. I'm actually doing second generation stamping, so I'm stamping over on that scrap paper and then I'm stamping onto my project just because I wanted it to be a little bit of a fainter image. And that's something that's cool about stamping is you can kind of change the impression you get with how many stamps. So a first generation stamp is when you stamp it directly off of the stamp pad, and that usually gives you a richer color, a little bit crisper. And then the second generation is when you stamp it down the second time and there's still a little bit of leftover ink, and that just gives you a lighter imprint. And that's kind of what I was going for this particular entry in those sections. Now I'm just using my Tombow tape runner to adhere all of these little envelopes onto my page, and then I will come through and trim off the ones that are hanging over the edge. I actually end up deciding to leave the one at the top that is hanging up over the top because I figured it will work really well as a tab. So at this point, I spot the pack of die cuts and I was looking at the hearts that are in there. They have a little bit of black around them, and I thought that was a nice contrast. I have a lot of muted tones on the page and I love adding some little pops of black. So I'm kind of placing those on the page where I think they're going to go. But before I decide to put them down, I'm going to pull out my new set of acrylograph pens. These are the 0.7 millimeter pens. They're really fine. And I'm using my new set, which happens to be the warm fall colors, I believe. Let me double check. The warm fall colors, yes. And I'm going to color in little bits of the stamping on the rainbow just to bring in some more of that kind of ice spruce color. And then you'll see I bring in a color that on screen looks black, but what it really is kind of this dark green with gray in it. It's just a beautiful color and it adds some nice contrast to my page. And that's why I love these pens, just because I can do some really nice detailed work. It's not going to go through my Bible page. It doesn't bleed through or anything. And it gives a really rich color as if I were painting with acrylic paint. You can see I'm just getting the pens started over there because this is a new set, and I'll be tracing several of the hearts in this dark green color. And like I said, it is just so pretty. I really like it. I could have traced the whole rainbow in this color, to be honest. I absolutely loved it. In day 1 of the devotional, we are looking at the parable of the sower, and we're actually considering why, as believers, we would need to hear the gospel over and over again. And the author of the devotional kind of brings up that over and over again, we see in the New Testament that the apostles and the disciples are beginning letters or using the gospel, like preaching the gospel over and over to churches that should already be believers. And why would we need to hear the basic truths of the gospel over and over again if we were already believers? And so then she points us to the parable of the sower. And I actually went to a different part of the parable than what was pointed out in the devotional. And I was thinking of the seeds that were scattered on the rocky soil that were brought in really fast. And a lot of times when we become Christians, we're so excited and we are on fire for Christ, and we just dive in really fast, but we don't take the time to really put down roots, to join a community that is going to feed truth into us, to really dig in and understand what the gospel means. And so then we end up parched and we burn out. So for me, what has really helped me on my journey is continually digging into the gospel, being connected to a community that does speak truth and love into my life has really been important. And so that's what I wanted to focus on. And so my title for this page is going to be Your Word Feeds My faith. And the idea being that these letters from God that came down and are part of the Bible really feed my faith. They remind me over and over the truth of the gospel. And I just think that that's really important and a lesson I wanted to take away. All right, you can see while I was talking, I trimmed out those die cut hearts just to take out some of the white. And now I'm adhering them on my page. The parts that I trimmed out, I'm actually going to add up top, and they help me kind of fill in a blank space that was up in that top left corner. Just felt a little bit odd to me. So I'm glad I had those little bits and pieces that I can fill in over there to give the hints of more hearts kind of going off of the page. Now I have my Archer and Olive pen back, and I decided I wanted even more contrast with that rainbow, so I'm very carefully outlining the first or the biggest arch, bringing in that same really deep dark green that is almost a gray. I wish Archer and Olive gave their colors names. They don't. They put them in sets. Each set is unique. There are no repeats on colors. But I wish they had names. I'm going to have to start just naming them myself. I think that'd be fun to create my own names and just add them, my little label maker, onto my markers. Once I finish that outline, then I go and just find a few of the little hearts that are in that third rainbow arch, and I'm going to color those in the same color. So now I've brought that contrast throughout the whole rainbow. I really think it makes it pop even more, and I love it. Now, I'm looking at how I want to add my title. I kind of wish I'd had a darker green, but this one will be perfect. It has a beautiful lace look in the background. So I'm going to use these stickers, these clear tile alphas, and I'm going to mix and match it with some hand lettering. So I will use them at the top to write your word, and it fits perfectly in that little space. Then I'm coming with a pencil. Whenever I'm going to do hand lettering, I always start with a pencil first. And this ends up being a little challenging because I decide that I want to use that same acrylograph pen because I like the color and I want to continue bringing that color onto the page. But it's not necessarily a lettering pen that like I'm used to. I'm used to my Tombow lettering pen. So I have to come back and kind of do this faux lettering look where I'm making the downstrokes bigger, and it takes a little bit of time and patience to just kind of get it right. And you'll see in some of the close-up pictures at the end, it's not perfect, but like I always say, it doesn't have to be perfect to have meant something, meaning bringing meaning to your time with God. So I was having a good time listening to worship music, working on this lettering, kind of building it up little by little. The other thing is I have the 0.7 millimeter pens, which are the really fine tip ones. And it's hard, it takes a little time to color in this area with the fine tip pens. But I like how it comes out in the end. It's not perfect, but it's still cool. And I really, really am loving the color. So I was pleased with it. I decided to go ahead and letter the word faith before I added in the word my, because I just wanted to make sure the spacing was correct. So same process, coming in with the pencil, and then I will come back in with the acrylograph pen and I will trace it out. Same process where I'm having to kind of go back and add the downstrokes. But on this one, I got a little bit too rushed and pressed too hard. And if you press too hard with the acrylograph pens, they can kind of, because of the way their tip is, it's very grippy, it can kind of scratch and then you get a little bit of splatter. I'm not sure if that makes sense. If you have them, you might understand what I mean. So I had a little bit of the splatter just because I was scratching my pen or dragging it in a little bit of a different way. These do take some getting used to, and I should probably do a video all about tips with these pens because I'm loving them. They are awesome, but they do take a little bit of getting used to. All right, so my title's done. I'm just erasing some of the extra pencil marks, and the page is actually almost done. I just want to take my pen and make sure I'm highlighting the text that I wanted to focus on, and I do that by just adding some little hearts around the parable of the sower. And then I'm trying to remember to always date my entries. I got out of the habit somehow, and so I'm just going to add in the date here along the side of the rainbow, and then a ribbon tab, and then this entry will be done. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider hitting that subscribe button as well as the bell notification button. I have listed all of the supplies I used down below. Heads up, those are affiliate links, just so you know. All right, I hope that you have a fabulous day, and as always, keep it creative.